These B20 and G20 dialogues, I think, are extraordinary opportunities. We have done already some of them for business, and I hope also for the G20 presidency to share priorities and concerns with a common idea to accelerate sustainable and inclusive growth. The main goals of our shell are halt protectionism, ensure equal access to vaccine and health care, spread the benefits of innovation and technologies to advance progress. We strongly urge all business to commit and accelerate further action on climate change. And the third point is that we ask from governments policies and clear action to accelerate the climate transition. Our ultimate deliverables will concentrate on accelerating the transition towards a sustainable and carbon-neutral energy mix and an efficient use of energy to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, while ensuring the highest degree of resilience and of inclusivity of the global supply chains. This process requires a huge amount of economic resources that need to be invested with a cost-effectiveness approach. It will be necessary to consider all the technological options in support of the decarbonization, from the electrification to low-carbon energy sources and carriers, from clean fuels such as green hydrogen, bioenergies, to synthetic fuels, and to decarbonize harder-to-abate industrial sector and transport sector.
We need to set up a serious pathway to decarbonization in the short, mid, and long term. I think we all agree about that. But above all, I think we should do something which is sustainable, not only in terms of environment, but also in terms of productive system, social stability, workforce stability. I think we have an extra responsibility this year compared to the past. And I think what we have to promote is a very comprehensive approach, getting together, aligning somehow G7, G20, and COP26. If the three events do not talk to each other, they're not coherent, they're not consistent, we're going to waste a lot of time and we're going to miss a lot of opportunities. We should put the ecosystem and natural resources at the center of the political agenda. This is somehow commonly accepted, but it has to be transformed into something very real, very pragmatic. Today, I think it's very clear the nexus between climate change and energy policies. Having this awareness is very important because companies first are interrogating themselves on how can we make it better. And I think this everybody knows. How fast can be the transition will depend on how much public and private will collaborate, how much finance will support, and of course, how much the public awareness will change our behaviors in terms of mobility, use of resources, heating of the house, cooling of the houses, manufacturing, and so on and so forth.
One of the things that we should take from the horrible experience of the last year is that we can't shrink our way to net zero. We need to invest and grow. And for that, we are going to need three things. We need competitive technologies. I'm not the best place to speak to that. We have a session coming after me, and Fadi Birol can speak to that. We need credible and predictable government policy. I'll say a few words on that. And we need large-scale private finance. All G7 countries committed to mandatory pathways for TCFD disclosure, this basic climate disclosure, which isn't just about the impact of a company on the climate today, but its impact tomorrow. It's forward-looking, and that is obviously critical. We need to bring that to the G20 and get as much buy-in at the G20 as well, and also to support the IFRS Foundation with its Sustainable Financing Standards Board, which will cover 120 plus countries around the world. This transition is not digital. It's not simply brown and green. There's a continuum. There are 50 shades of green. We need to get money across the energy sector, so there is a transition.
I have rarely seen such a momentum in addressing the climate change. It is great, and we cannot let this momentum go. And the G20 comes at the right time under the presidency of Italy. We think the pathway to reach net zero is very narrow, but still achievable. And the key precondition here is the international collaboration, whether it exists or not. If it doesn't exist, our chances is basically zero. So we have these two jobs: make the most out of the existing clean energy technologies and give a big push to the technologies under development but not yet part of the market. It is very important to remember that the clean energy transition is for and about people. The nature of the climate change is so that unless everybody finishes the race, nobody wins the race. So it is very important that the G20 gives this right signal to investors, business community, that it's an unmistakable signal that the investors see the right way to invest so that they don't suffer in the future. So does our planet.
Energy is, you're right, it's a big field. Everything is finally coming down to this huge energy transition, which for some is a winning battle, for others is a losing battle. I think it is not a battle, it's a common effort. We need to really work on making global infrastructures more resilient in the face of climate events, cybercrime, and other disruptive events that are more and more frequent, and work on a just transition. I think that's what we heard from Minister Cingolani and also Mark, and also now Fatih, is that we have a big task. The planet will be better off after this transition has taken place. But in the process, a lot of people have doubts about their future, will have problems in finding different jobs. So it's a big task for politicians and regulators to work policies that will make just transition happen, not just in words, but in facts.
I'm convinced that we can achieve the climate goals of the Paris Agreement. We can if we have mutual consensus and we have a perceived mission by society as a whole. And I think we are getting closer to that, and I think the G20 summit can play a role. And if we are able to set a clear framework by the G20 members, how to achieve, where to set the priorities. Together, we can really create the conditions for something new. If we want to see a more rapid change towards combustion vehicles, we must ensure that we have more green electricity.
We have a once-in-a-lifetime chance to ensure that this spending, and I'll call it investment, that's facilitated by our governments and our private sector to stimulate the economy is used to combat climate change and create not just a transition to a carbon neutral energy mix, but a transition that's a just one. Transition to a clean energy economy does. It gives us a unique opportunity to attract new workers, especially younger workers and women. Today, I think we all know that women make up proportionally less of the workforce in the energy industry than in the general industry. And diversity, I believe, is going to be a key to innovation in our sector going forward.
The world was not prepared for the COVID. So what we want to say here is that we have to be prepared to other global emergencies. So this is the reason why we decided to set up this Action Council.
People should always be at the center while tackling the transition. Moreover, they can support change with their skills and individual behaviors. Technology, as the minister said, are enabling factor, very critical to mitigate risk and find innovative solutions to accelerate the transition. Therefore, to respond to climate challenge, it is important to firstly encourage the financing and development of climate mitigation measures, applying all available solutions and incentivizing R&D and to find new solutions. At the same time, minimize the cost of vulnerable communities and support economic growth. Secondly, measure progress through KPIs and support transparent ESG disclosure. Thirdly, promote public-private partnerships to finance climate mitigation measures.
The task force work, of course, can only complement the outright reduction efforts that corporations need to make. That has to be the first priority in every regard. But if we have this very important complementary tool, that should allow us to move the literally hundreds of billions of dollars that will need to move from the wealthier parts of the world primarily into the less wealthy parts of the world, with a view to actually both protecting the current carbon sinks, but also investing both in the capabilities and the technologies to remove carbon from the environment prospectively.
I do believe that market price signals on CO2 and mechanisms which maintain a level playing field between countries are absolutely necessary to make investment in decarbonization sufficiently attractive for the private sector. It's a very important way to make sure that the efforts that we are doing in Europe don't create an imbalance in terms of competitiveness with the rest of the world. Let's us boost internal cooperation regarding CO2 pricing mechanism and transparent market-based trading. And then the need for public support to innovation is indeed absolutely key. And again, it would help develop an hydrogen economy, which could indeed, in some parts of the world, make the difference.
The impelling need to mitigate the effects of climate change and thus meet the decarbonization targets set in the Paris Agreement is clearly leading the energy sector to commit proactively to accelerating a profound transformation. It is essential to promote the electrification of energy consumption in all sectors, as it is considered the most efficient way of integrated energy produced from renewable sources across several industries.
The climate change mitigation is driving force to deliver on net zero emission targets and achieve sustainable development in line with the UN SDGs. In particular, our priorities to support a sustainable and just transition include